course outline, objective of the course, reference books we should follow, and schedule and a grading policy. And also discuss about why this course is so essential for your graduate degree. The study of this course will help you in understanding the behavior of materials in actual applications, how they react under defined manufacturing methods. Knowledge of materials are basically a prerequisite for any mechanical design or analysis job. That is the key point or key, you can say, key theme of this course. That this is the knowledge of materials is a prerequisite for any mechanical design or analysis job. The material selection criteria for any engineering applications is also discussed by showcasing the case study of beverages can, or you can say cold drinks can, in the previous class. And just to help you recalling the concept, I am repeating that material selection for any specific application has a triangular relationship between the material properties, the shape or size to be produced or manufactured or fabricated, and processes to be employed to develop or manufacture the final product. Okay, so this is the main essence of this course. A triangular relationship is there between the material properties, processes, or the shapes and sizes to be produced, and the processes or the manufacturing methods to be employed to develop or manufacture the final product. So this is the main essence of this course, this ME252 or materials for mechanical engineering. My one and only expectation from you that after completion of this course, all of you must be able to adopt the technique of material selection for engineering applications. So it is your takeaway that simply look at any product employing at your household application or any precision applications like aerospace sector or automotive sector, and try to find out or try to list out the engineering requirements of that products and the thrust, okay, and the thrust behind choosing a particular material for developing that product. So this is your home task. Just simply look at any product, consider any product employing either at household applications for making a cooktop or making any that household fittings, or any precision application either like auto sectors or aerospace sector, and try to list out the engineering requirements of the products and the thrust behind choosing a particular material for developing the product. Okay, so it is your home task, you can say that. So if you can recall, in last class I informed you the engineering materials or materials is mostly employed in engineering applications are broadly classified as metals and alloys, ceramics and polymers. Okay, so each one is having each that metals, alloys, ceramics or polymer, each one is having distinct properties. And for example, metals and alloys are known for their thermal and electrical conductivity, ductility and malleability. Okay, basically this ductility and malleability are basically these are almost similar term. The ductility means a material, if you check the Stratton diagram of any material, okay, Stratton diagram of any material, you can easily find that in the Stratton diagram a very precise elastic point is there, and beyond within elastic point that the region is termed as elastic region, and beyond elastic region is termed as plastic region. So if we apply the load, and that load lies within the elastic limit, when we remove the load, the material springs back to its original shape or attains the original shape, and that's why it is known as elasticity of property of the material or elastic region of the material. But if the applied load exceeds the elastic limit or lies within the plastic region, so after removal of load itself, the material uh, the material experiences a permanent deformation or permanent set. So ductility basically the ability of a material to undergo the plastic deformation, large amount of significant amount of plastic deformation before failure or before actual fracture. Okay, so ductility, malleability are basically similar terms, and ductility, the ability of a material to undergo plastic deformation or significant amount of plastic deformation before fracture under tension or under pull type load. Okay, pull type load. And malleability, when applied load is compressive in nature, or you can say push type load. Okay, so ductility is associated with tension, malleability is associated with compression. Both are similar terms, and the concept is that the amount of plastic deformation a material can undergo before factual fracture. Okay, so metals are known for their ductility, malleability, thermal and electrical conductivity, where plastics are known for their lightweight insulation property, while ceramics are famous for their high hardness, high compressive strength, and high resistance capacity. And if we are looking for mixing of property, we must go for composites. Okay, so today we will start discussing about the metals and alloys, and a special class of engineering materials, you can say. Basically, metals are characterized by the properties like ductility, malleability, toughness, and electrical and thermal conductivity. Okay, so if in a product, if you are looking, if you are suppose if I wish to develop a product, and for that the engineering requirements are ductility, malleability, toughness, or electrical and thermal conductivity, we must go for metals and alloys. That is the concept. Okay, so there these metals are converted into parts and products using manufacturing processes such as machining operations, you can say, like turning, boring, rimming, drilling, grinding. Okay, metalworking techniques, like metalworking is basically forming techniques, different type of forming techniques, and where we convert the raw material into some usable products by plastic deformation, that is termed as metalworking techniques. Okay, like rolling, like forging, like drawing, extrusion. These are typical examples of metalworking techniques. Or by joining methods, welding is a typical example of joining methods. Okay, the starting form of metals depends on the method employed. The starting form of metals depends on the process employed. Actually, the story, if we if we try to figure out the process, how a suppose iron is some iron, raw iron is converted into some usable iron product. The story is that iron is available in the earth crust in the form of oxide. Either we have to collect the iron ores like magnetite, or like apatite. We have to collect those iron ores. After collecting those iron ores, we have to extract the iron. Okay, extract the iron, and during it is extraction process, the some type of impurities like carbon, you can say sulfur, manganese, phosphorus, is attached with the iron, with the pure iron. So it is really difficult to get the pure iron or iron in pure form. You always get some type of impurities in the iron. After getting that iron with some impurities, we have to convert that raw material. We have to convert the raw material into some intermediate product. Because if you wish to if you wish to develop a suppose if you wish to fabricate a box, okay, iron box of 5 by 5 mm, then it is really difficult to find a same size, box of same size. Okay, for that you have to choose the either you have to purchase the iron sheets or iron plates from the market. Only plates, sheets, or round bars or cylindrical bars are available in the market. And after procuring those items, either procuring the sheet or procuring the plate, you have to follow some manufacturing method to convert it into some usable product. So this raw material, this cylindrical bars or cylinder square bar or plates or sheets are basically intermediate shape or intermediate position. Okay, so after extracting the raw material, we have to convert those raw material into some intermediate structure, intermediate shapes. Okay, and that can be done by these three methods: either by casting, either by casting, second one is by rolling or metalworking process, and third one is powder metallurgy process. So on the basis of these three methods, this is the process of converting the raw material into some intermediate form. After converting the intermediate form, we have to follow some manufacturing methods to convert it into some usable products. So these, we can say that these are the three routes of getting the metals or alloys. Okay, and the final form or starting form depends on the process employed to convert this raw material into some intermediate form. Like if you find cast metal, if casting process is employed. If you will find wrought metal if you rolling process or metalworking process is employed, and you will get powder metallurgy technique is employed. Okay, powder metallurgy technique is employed. So in this regard, I just wish to give you a brief idea of these three techniques. Okay, before going into the details of other methods or other processes, I just try to highlight these three methods: the casting, rolling, and powder metallurgy. What do you mean by this term casting, rolling, and powder metallurgy? Now coming to the casting. The casting is basically the method in which liquefied metal is poured inside a mold of the shape to be produced and allow it to solidify so that liquefied metal can attain the shape of the mold. Okay, so basically we are having a mold cavity. Suppose we are looking for a shape, specific shape, so you have to jet this shape on the mold, and that is termed as mold cavity. After liquefying the metal, we have to pour the liquefied metal inside the mold cavity and allow it to solidify so that liquefied metal can attain the shape of that mold cavity. After solidification, we have to separate out the mold and the cast product. Okay, and then as a result we will get the final product. The final properties of this product largely rely on the solidification rate, or you can say cooling rate. Okay, or the time taken to solidify. Okay, or time taken to convert from liquid to solid. Owing to the natural characteristic of liquid, the natural characteristic of liquid is flowability. Okay, so owing to the natural characteristic of liquid in casting, liquidified metal can reach farthest corner or narrow section of a mold. Okay, that is the beauty of liquid, or that is the natural characteristic of liquid, that is flowability. Owing to this flowability, liquidified metal can reach farthest corner or extreme corner or narrow section of a mold, and hence very fine details or intricate shapes can be produced through casting. This is the beauty, or this is the main advantage of using casting, that you can generate very fine details or intricate shapes using casting. All the statues like bronze statues or brass statues are made of casting. POP statues are made of casting only. Although achieving good surface finish is a hurdle for the process. Okay, that is a main problem with casting, that it is really difficult to achieve good surface finish, as well as liquidify metal is poured inside the mold and allow it to solidify. As a result, the liquid metal will be converted into solid. So there should be some type of shrinkage. Okay, some type of shrinkage, and therefore controlling the dimensions is really difficult, really a hair-raising problem in case of casting. Okay, so the two problems are there that are associated with casting, that is achieving good surface finish and controlling the dimensional accuracy. Okay, now coming to the next process, that is rolling. Rolling basically a metalworking process. Metalworking means basically obtaining the final shape by plastic deformation. Metalworking basically a special class of manufacturing methods, and rolling is a metalworking process, and metalworking means obtaining the final shape by plastic deformation. In rolling, plastic deformation is executed by passing the workpiece or job between two heavy metal rolls. Okay, the plastic deformation is executed by passing the workpiece or job or part between two heavy metal rolls. Okay, just to simplify the concept, this rolling process is similar to the equipment used for extracting the sugarcane juice. I hope you are very much well aware of this machine or this equipment that used to extract the sugarcane juice. You can easily find it at roadside. So if you can visualize the process, okay, if you can recall the process, the sugar cans are passed between two metallic cylindrical components. Okay, and these metallic cylindrical components are termed as rolls. Okay, similarly in case of rolling, metals are passed between two rolls, two heavy metal rolls. As a consequence, the cross sectional area reduces. As a consequence, the cross sectional area reduces. A last technique, that is powder metallurgy. In powder metallurgy, metal powders are used and compacted in a die containing the shape to be produced, and secondary operations are performed to control the final properties of the outcome. Okay, so in case of powder metallurgy, you have to convert the solid metal into in the powder form or powder particle. After getting the powder particle, we can add some additives or other alloying element to improve or to control the, to change the properties of the that metal or the properties of the final product. After that is termed, that process is termed as mixing and blending. After mixing and blending, we have to compact it in the die that containing the shape to be produced. After compaction, we have to go for sintering process. Sintering process basically heat treatment process, where we can improve the compactness or bindings between powder particles, and thus we can control the final strength of the object. Okay. After sintering, we'll go for other secondary operations like infiltration, impregnation, and sizing to control the final properties of the outcome. Okay. So the gist of discussion is that metals can be produced through three routes. One is casting, second one is metalworking, and third one is powder metallurgy. Okay. So now moving on, and we are now coming to the classification of metals and alloys. And metals and alloys are classified as ferrous and non-ferrous. Ferrous metals and alloys contain a high portion of iron element, or you can say ferrum, where in non-ferrous metals and alloys are free of iron element. Okay. Ferrous used for applications where high strength is required at low cost, relatively low cost, where weight is not of primary importance. Okay, where weight is not a deciding factor, and we are looking for a product at relatively low cost, we will go for ferrous metals and alloys. So ferrous are used for applications, okay, where high strength is required at relatively low cost. Okay, and their weight is not a deciding factor or not of primary importance. Okay, and that's why it is widely used in structural applications. Okay, so all the bridges you can see or the building structures are made of ferrous metals and alloys. Okay, so non-ferrous metals are rarely used as structural materials as they lack mechanical strength. Okay, so if we are looking for a good strength at low cost, we will go for ferrous metals and alloys. If but non-ferrous are rarely used as structural materials because they lack mechanical strength. That is the problem of non-ferrous materials, non-ferrous metals and alloys. Non-ferrous used for their unique properties. Okay, that is corrosion resistance, electrical and thermal conductivity. That is the beauty of non-ferrous metals and alloys. If you check the wiring of your house or anywhere, you can find copper wire or aluminum wire. Why? Because copper wire or copper or aluminum are having very good electrical conductivity. Okay. Moreover, they are having very good ductility, and you can easily convert into in the form of wire, in the shape of wire. That is the beauty of non-ferrous metals and alloys. So non-ferrous metals or alloys never or rarely used as structural material, but they're uh, they're basically employed for their unique properties like corrosion resistance, electrical and thermal conductivity. Okay, if you check the if you can recall that the food or the rolls are the foods, mainly foods are wrapped up inside aluminum foil. Why aluminum foil? Because aluminum is having a good ductility property. You can easily convert the aluminum plate or sheets in the form of foil. Moreover, aluminum is having a very good corrosion resistance property. Okay, so it can basically control. It can basically if we wrap up the food by aluminum foil, there is no problem or no harmful reaction can be occurred. Okay, so that is the issue with non-ferrous alloys. Non-ferrous used for their unique properties like corrosion resistance property, electrical and thermal conductivity or good ductility. Now, better strength to weight ratio makes them competitive with ferrous metals in moderate to high stress application. Okay, so if we consider the non-ferrous metals or alloys, initially if we go back to last decade, the only selection criteria is that the mechanical strength. Suppose we are looking for a structural application or any mechanical application, first criteria by selection criteria is the strength of that material. But now weight is very deciding very important factor. because suppose a one component is employed in a as used as a component of or parts of car body or aerospace sector, then the weight or mass of that component is really a deciding factor, because auto sector or aerospace sector are always looking for fuel efficiency. Okay, and that's where their main motto or main objective is that the car body or the flight should be of low weight but must provide sufficient strength. Okay, must provide sufficient stiffness. So in place of strength, nowadays new criteria is basically invented, that is strength new criteria is considered, that is strength to weight ratio. And strength to weight ratio, if we consider this as a selection criteria, strength to weight ratio, that ratio makes the non-ferrous metals competitive with ferrous metals in moderate to high stress application. Okay, so we can use as non-ferrous metals like aluminum and magnesium, titanium are having very good strength to weight ratio property. We can easily use those non-ferrous metals and alloys in moderate to high stress application. In the present scenario, alloying is executed to improve the strength of non-ferrous metals to employ them in structural applications. Okay, initially I told you that non-ferrous metals are rarely used as structural materials, but nowadays, but present scenario, alloying is executed or alloying is performed to improve the strength of the non-ferrous metals. Alloying means mixing of other element, metallic or non-metallic element. Okay, and that mixing is homogeneous mixing or mixing at atomic level. Okay, to improve the strength of non-ferrous metals to employ them in structural applications. Okay, for instance, if we consider an example, the example is different aluminum alloys are utilized in manufacturing car bodies or flight structures. Okay, if we go to the market or if you suppose wish to purchase some aluminum alloys, then you have to specify, the actual ingredient of that aluminum alloys, and the basis of that, these aluminum alloys are classified in different series like 1000 series, 2000 series, 3000 series. I will discuss this thing during discussing the aluminum alloys. So you have to specify this thing. Suppose I am looking for a we're looking for a material or aluminum alloys that will be used to produce a component for auto body or car body or for flight structure. We have to go for 6000 and 7000 series. What is 6000, what is 7000? I will discuss it during the discussion of aluminum alloys. Okay, so these are different type of aluminum alloys, and these are basically trade name of aluminum alloys, and you have to specify if you are looking for, if you are going to purchase different type of aluminum alloys from the open market. Okay, so uh, so now this is the main difference between ferrous and non-ferrous alloys. Ferrous where iron is the main ingredient, non-ferrous where iron is not the main ingredient. In place of iron, aluminum is there, magnesium is there, titanium is there, zinc is there, copper is there. So ferrous are known for their strength, and that's why known for their strength at low cost, and that's why mainly used in structural applications. Non-ferrous metals and alloys are known for their other unique properties like thermal conductivity, electrical conductivity, ductility, corrosion resistance property. Okay, although owing to some of the non-ferrous metals and alloys are having better or very good strength to weight ratio, that can be used in structural moderate to high stress applications. Another issue is that alloying is executed to improve the strength of non-ferrous metals to employ them in structural application, for example making the car bodies or making fly structures, etc. Okay, so now coming to the classification of ferrous and non-ferrous. Okay, before that, these are typical examples of steel and cast iron, and this is examples of non-ferrous metals and alloys. Okay, so till now, any query, any question? Dear students, any query, any question?
No, sir.
Okay. So moving on, the basic source of iron is iron ore. Okay, an oxide of iron that mixed with alumina, silica, phosphorus, manganese, sulfur, and other materials. During the major iron ore are basically hematite and amagnetite, which contains near about 50%, 55% or 55 to 60% iron. Okay, absolute pure iron is very difficult to obtain. Okay, an absolute pure iron is soft and highly plastic metal of light gray color. Okay, okay, the absolute pure iron is very soft. That means having very good dactylitic property. The only application that can be found for this pure iron is in making magnets. You can prepare magnets from pure iron, but it is really difficult to get pure iron, absolute pure iron. Each time you will find some sort of impurities like alumina, silica, phosphorus, manganese, or sulfur. Okay, so it is really difficult to find absolute pure iron. The extensive use of iron is in the form of its large number of alloys. So mainly iron, pure iron, is used in the form of alloys. So the actual application is of ferrous alloys, not ferrous metals. Okay, iron can be alloyed with many elements. Okay, alloys if iron or carbon are most widely used in engineering applications. Okay, so we can say that the main alloying element in case of iron is carbon. The main alloying element is carbon, and the maximum amount of carbon that can be allowed, that can be accommodated in the iron or alloyed with iron is 6.67%. Okay, and we can say that this is the maximum affinity of iron towards carbon, or that much amount of carbon can be accommodated in ferrum structure, ferrum lattice. Okay, the size of carbon atom is comparatively smaller than the ferrum atom, and therefore carbon atoms take the you can say interstitial position, the position between two ferrum atoms. Okay, so this so as size of carbon atom is comparatively smaller, that's why the carbon atoms take the interstitial position, the position between two ferrum atoms. Okay, and up to 6.67% of carbon, that is weight percentage, a maximum 6.67% of carbon can be accommodated inside the ferrum lattice. Okay, so maximum affinity of iron towards carbon is 6.67%. So alloys containing up to 2% carbon are termed as steels. 2% carbon are termed as steels, and above 2% are called cast irons. So if we go back to the previous slide, these ferrous alloys are classified as steel and cast iron. Steel and cast iron. So maximum affinity is 6.67%. Up to 2% carbon, that is termed as steel, and above 2%, that is called as those are called as cast irons. Okay, beside carbon, these alloys also contain small amount of manganese, sulfur, phosphorus, and silicon. Okay, but the properties of steel are influenced significantly by an increase in carbon content, with the result that tensile strength is increased, greater hardness, you can say ductility decreases, and weldability decreases. So the main alloying element in case of iron is carbon, and then controls the many mechanical properties of the alloy. Okay, so steel, we can say steel basically a alloy of iron and carbon. So the properties of steels are influenced significantly by the carbon content. If we increase the carbon content in steel, the tensile strength and hardness will be increased, but in expense of ductility and weldability. Okay. However, it is to be noted that all steels, even when alloyed with other alloying elements, not beside carbon or not other alloying element beside carbon, the maximum hardness that can be obtained after heat treatment process is basically a function of the carbon content. Okay. So carbon content in steel, or carbon content in steel or cast iron will decide the amount of heat treatment process. What is heat treatment process? Heat treatment process is basically a method to convert or to alter or to control the properties of the material by heating and cooling the material. Okay, we have to heat up the material up to a certain temperature, up to austenitic zone for steel, and then we have to cool down it, okay, at defined cooling rate to get different microstructure and different properties or mechanical properties in the final outcome. Okay, so steels, coming to the steels first, and you can it is a from this slide I'm trying to just I'm trying to showcase the different applications of steels. Most of the steel is mainly used in construction purpose, and that is near about 43%. Besides that, automobile sector is a another major user of steels, that is 27%. Then machinery equipment, then the energy sector or power sector, appliances, container, that is making different type of wagons or container, then defense sector and other applications like household applications. Okay, and if you check the world steel production, it is increasing day by day. In case of 1950s, it is near about 189, and it is predicted into 2020 this is 1770. So you can understand the use of steels, you can understand the necessity of steels. Okay, and here the stage-wise steel production in our country are highlighted or depicted, and the major player is Odisha, that produce near about 18,537, and next is Jharkhand, and that is followed by Chhattisgarh and Karnataka. And beside these states, West Bengal, Gujarat, and Maharashtra also participate in producing the steels. Okay, so moving on. So this is the my main intention to show this slide to understand or to simplify the concept that steel is most widely used alloys. Okay, if maybe in construction sector, maybe in automotive sector, and that's why its production is going on day by day. Its production is increasing day by day. Okay, now coming to the steels on the basis of alloying amount are classified as low alloy steel and high alloy steels. Okay, so first classification, low alloy steel and high alloy steel. In the low alloy steel, the alloying amount is less than 10%. If the total alloying amount is less than 10%, including maximum 2% of carbon, then that is termed as low alloy steel. Okay, so in case of steel, the maximum amount of carbon can be 2%, not more than that. And if the total alloying element, including 2% of carbon, maximum 2% of carbon, is less than 10%, then that is known as low alloy steel. Then that is known as low alloy steel. Okay, in high alloy steel, the amount of alloying elements is higher than 10%. In case of high alloy, it is greater than 10%, and in case of low alloy, it is less than 10%. In low alloy steel, the main alloying element is carbon, and that controls the properties of the material. Beside carbon, small amount of magnesium, or you can say sulfur, phosphorus, silicon is observed, but generally these are considered as impurities in case of low alloy steel. So on the basis of carbon content, these low alloy steels are further classified as low carbon steel. Okay, the carbon percentage is 0.1 to 0.3%. Then medium carbon steel, that is 0.3 to 0.6%, and high carbon steel, that is 0.6 to 1.7%. Okay, just take a look of this percentage of the carbon content. Okay, it is very common question you may face during your interview or during your any exam, written exam, MCQ type any exam. So low alloy steel is classified on the basis of carbon percentage or carbon amount. Low alloy steels are further classified as low carbon steel, contains 0.1 to 0.3%, carbon, medium carbon steel that contains 0.3 to 0.6% carbon, and high carbon steel that contains 0.6 to 1.7% carbon. Okay. Now coming to the high alloy steel, the high alloy steel is classified as stainless steel and tool steel. So this high alloy steel is classified as stainless steel and tool steel. Okay, and this classification is based on the percentage of chromium used for alloying. Okay, in case of low alloy steel, carbon, here it is chromium. So on the low alloy steel is further classified on the basis of carbon, and high alloy steel is further classified on the basis of chromium percentage. Okay, so high alloy steel is classified as stainless steel and tool steels, and this classification is based on the percentage or amount of chromium used for alloying. For stainless steel, chromium percentage is higher than 11%. If a steel having if a high alloy steel having more than 11% of chromium, then that can be termed as stainless steel. Okay. Now the question is why this classification is based on chromium percentage? Why not on the basis of other element? The main use with steel is its poor corrosion. The main problem with steel is its poor corrosion resistance property. Basically, if we consider the low alloy steels are generally used for structural application or to produce some cutting tools or hand tools. But if we go for some precision application, if we wish to use steel in precision application, then we have to alloy it. We have to add some alloying element in steels to improve the some of the properties like strength property, corrosion resistance property, and wear resistance property. Okay, if we the main issue with steel is its poor corrosion resistance property. Okay, corrosion resistant property. But because in case of low alloy steel, rusting is a very common phenomena. Okay, rusting is a very common phenomena. Steel in the normal condition, in the presence of water or oxygen, steel reacts with the oxygen and produces ferrosulfuric oxide. That is basically process of rusting. Okay, so that is the main problem with steel. That is a poor corrosion resistance property, and that's why these low alloy steels are not used where corrosion resistance property is a deciding factor, like desalination plant, or you can say like process plants, or like you can say surgical instruments, because surgical instrument each and every time surgical instruments come into contact with or serum or water. Okay, and therefore the surgical instrument must have very good corrosion resistance property, and that's why low alloy steels never used to develop or manufacture surgical instrument. In place of low alloy steels, if you check the scissor or knives used for surgery are mainly made of stainless steel, which is having very good corrosion resistance property. So one main motto of alloying is improving the corrosion resistance property and improving the mechanical strength quality, and that can be done by adding chromium with steel, and that's why further classification of high alloy steel is on the basis of chromium percentage. Okay, that's why this is in case of high alloy steel, chromium is the most common alloying element. Okay, and that improves the corrosion resistance property as well as resistance property and strength property. Okay, so moving on. So in a gist, we can conclude from this slide. This steels are classified as low alloy steel and high alloy steel. If its alloying percentage is more than 10%, then that is called as high alloy steel. If it is less than 10%, then that is termed as low alloy steel. In case of low alloy steel, carbon is the main ingredient, carbon is the main alloying element. So on the basis of carbon, this low alloy steel are classified as low carbon steel, medium carbon steel, and high carbon steel. In case of high alloy steel, chromium is the main alloying element, and on the basis of this high alloy steels are classified as stainless steels and tool steels. If it is chromium percentage is greater than 11%, then that is still called as stainless steel. If it is not, then that type of high alloy steel is known as tool steel. So moving on, we'll discuss all the classification, all the type one by one, and we should start with the low carbon steel. So low carbon steel is generally known as soft or mild steel. Okay, mild steel that is very commonly available in the market, or in the, you can easily, it is very easily available and very cheap. You can find it costs near about 40 to 50 rupees kilo if you wish to purchase it from the open market. Okay, the actual carbon percentage of mild steel is 0.1 to 0.25%. Okay, so low carbon steel, the carbon percentage is low. So it is all, I already told you that if we increase the carbon percentage in steel, it will increase the tensile strength, it will increase the hardness, but in expense of ductility and buildability. So low carbon steel contains very low amount of carbon, and that is why this low carbon steel are soft, and it is used where ductility is important. Highest tensile strength is not required. Where ductility is important, we'll go for low carbon steel. Where tensile strength is not a deciding factor, we can go for low carbon steel. These low carbon steels are tough, but not wear resistance property, but not having wear resistance property. Owing to its good ductility, it can be formed very easily, and later, after forming, after converting into shape, it can be carburized to increase the hardness and wear resistance property of that component. Carburize means basically inserting the carbon particles or carbon atoms, okay, on the in the surface. Okay, and thus we can improve, or thus we can increase the hardness and wear resistance property of any component. So this low carbon steel having very good ductility. As a result, we can easily convert it into different shapes, and after conversion we can go for carburizing process to increase the hardness and wear resistance property. Also, these low carbon steels have good weldability property. You can easily weld it using different arc welding techniques. But these low carbon steels are not responsive to heat treatment processes. Not responsive to heat treatment processes. Heat treatment means basically by converting or altering the properties of material by heating and cooling that material. This low carbon steel are not responsive to heat treatment process, but one type of heat treatment process, that is known as case hardening, can be employed in case of low carbon steels. Other heat treatment process, it is really difficult to employ, or it is really difficult to attempt other heat treatment process on low carbon steels. Case hardening process can be executed, but other heat treatment process cannot be executed in case of low carbon steels. Low carbon steels form the largest percentage of steel produced because being the cheapest engineering material. Okay, it is the cheapest engineering materials, and that's why it is the largest percentage of steel. Okay, typical applications like including like screws, nails, nuts, bolts, light and heavy structural members, machine parts, car bodies, girders, etc. So these are the typical applications of low carbon steels. It can be used to develop or manufacture automotive bodies or car bodies, cans or beverages cans, girders, structural safes, etc. Okay, moving on. Next is medium carbon steel, and medium carbon steels contains 0.3 to 0.6% carbon, and comparatively higher carbon than low carbon steel, and therefore they are less ductile but harder and have greater tensile strength than low carbon steels. So if we wish to compare low carbon steel and medium carbon steel, low carbon steels contains comparatively smaller amount of carbon. Okay, and that's why medium carbon steels are less ductile but hardness or strength on the higher side. Okay, then comparatively than low carbon steels, they are more responsive. These medium carbon steels are more responsive to heat treatment. Okay, they are austenizing, quenching, and tempering. These are different types of heat treatment process or different procedure of heat treatment process that can be employed in case of medium carbon steel. Okay, that is a that is a problem with low carbon steel, that these processes cannot be implicated, cannot be executed for low carbon steels. For the medium carbon steel, we can carry out these processes, these heat treatment processes, to improve the mechanical properties. Okay, moving on. So this medium carbon steels are widely used in industries for making shafts, connecting rods, railway wheels, or you can say tracks, railway tracks, gears, crankshafts, and other machine elements requiring medium strength and wear resistant surface. So these are the typical applications of this medium carbon steels. You can some few glimpses are there. You can easily check this thing, that medium carbon steels are used to develop shafts, connecting rods, or railway wheels, tracks, gears, crankshaft, okay, and other machine elements that that requires medium strength and wear resistance surfaces. So moving on, the next one is high carbon steel. In case of high carbon steel, the carbon content is in the range of 0.6 to 1.7%. So that means it is a higher amount of carbon if we compare low carbon steel, medium carbon steel, and high carbon steel is having higher value of carbon content, that is 0.6 to 1.7%, and that's why high carbon steel is less ductile in comparison to low and medium carbon steel, but having very good hardness or high hardness and high strength. Okay, high carbon steel is less ductile and having less toughness. Okay, moreover, they also readily respond to heat treatment and generally used in hardened and tempered condition. Okay, so the amount of heat treatment that can be executed, amount of heat treatment that can be carried out depends on the amount of carbon percentage. If carbon percentage increases, the amount of heat treatment can be carried out will be increased. Okay, and that's why high carbon steel are very responsive, ready, or responsive to the heat treatment process. Okay, the another beauty of this high carbon steel is that they are especially wear resistance. Okay, because having a large value of carbon. Okay, and capable of holding a sharp cutting edge. This is the beauty of high carbon steels, and for that, and therefore the high carbon steels are used for making hand tools like chisels, punches, files, or taps. This is the example of taps. Taps are used for making internal threads. Okay, files are used in fitting shop. Okay, chisels, punches. Okay, and cutting tools like drills. This is a typical example of drills and drill bit. So high carbon steels are having very high amount of carbon. Okay, and that's why they are having very high strength or high hardness property. Moreover, they are capable of holding sharp cutting edges, and that's why they are widely used for making hand tools like chisels, punches, files, taps, etc. Besides this thing, they are also used to produce cutting tools like drills or drill bit. Okay. So it is already discussed the steels, especially the low alloy steels, do not possess good corrosion resistance. That is the issue with low alloy steel. Okay, that is the main problem with, or major problem with, major main issue with low alloy steels, that do not possesses good corrosion resistance. Hence, rusting is a major problem with steel that reduces the lifespan of the components. Okay, so rusting is a problem, major problem with steel, and that reduces the lifespan of the component. So I'm not going into details of this chemical reactions, and I know you are well about the rusting process. Rusting basically a process in which iron turns into iron oxide, and it happens when iron comes into contact with water and oxygen. Okay, so iron converted into ferrous oxide, and as a result, it decays. Okay, so the process is a type of corrosion. This rusting process is a type of corrosion, and that occurs easily under natural conditions. Okay, under environmental conditions, and this rusting problem, can somewhat be solved by either coating, sacrificial protection, and alloying. So the gist of this slide is that if we consider low alloy steels, the problem is that low alloy steels are not having very good corrosion resistance property, and therefore if we use this low alloy steel component in open air or in environment, they will come in contact of water and oxygen or moisture during the application, during the actual application, and the result rusting may occur. Okay, and that will reduce the lifespan or the service life of that component. So we have to minimize this problem, we have to eradicate this problem, and this problem can be eradicated, these problems can somewhat be solved by employing or by following one of these three methods. Okay, so first method is coating, second one is sacrificial protection, and third one is alloying. So we have to follow, we have to try coating, sacrificial protection, or alloying to improve the corrosion resistance property of the low alloy steels, as well to improve the service life of components that produced using low alloy steels. Okay. So before going into details, I just wish to give a brief idea of these three methods. What do you mean by coating? What is sacrificial protection, or what do you mean by alloying? So we should start with the coating. What is coating? Coating, the steel surface is covered up with a or multiple layers of corrosion resistance elements. Okay. For example, you might heard the term GI pipe or GI sheet. GI means basically galvanized iron. So galvanized iron is an example where coating is used to improve the corrosion resistance property or lifespan of the low alloy steel component. So galvanized iron or GI pipe or GI sheets are basically steel sheets or pipes which have been coated with zinc. The zinc has the element zinc is having very good corrosion resistance property, and the zinc coating provides a continuous barrier which does not allow moisture or oxygen to reach the steel, and thus it protects the steel surface from being removed by or being eradicated by corrosion or rusting. Okay, so first option is coating. So coating means basically the cover up the steel surface with a or multiple layers, with one or multiple layers of corrosion resistance elements. An example are GI pipes or GI sheets, where steel sheets or pipes have been coated with zinc. Okay. Next process is sacrificial protection, and sacrificial protection basically is a corrosion protection method in which a more electrochemically active metal is electrically attached to a less active metal. If we check this diagram, if we check the concept or physics of rusting, the concept is that when iron comes into contact, or when steel comes into contact of water and oxygen, that steels denote electron, okay, during the rusting process, during the corrosion process. Okay, but when we employ this technique, sacrificial protection, in case of sacrificial protection, this is the corrosion protection method in which a more electrochemically active metal is electrically attached to a less active metal, and the highly active metal donates electrons to replace those which may have been lost during oxidation of the protected metal. I'm coming to an example. For example, sacrificial protection of steels against, against corrosion by using a more reactive metals. Example is that normally zinc and magnesium alloys are more active, more electrochemically active metal than iron. So pieces of zinc or magnesium alloys are attached to pump bodies or pipes. Pump bodies or pipes are in contact with water, sometimes in the contact with some salt. Okay, so they are more prone to corrosion, or they're more prone to corrosive attack. That's why to protect themselves, protect these pump bodies or pipes from corrosion, pieces of zinc or magnesium alloys are attached to pump bodies and pipes. So protected metals become the cathode and does not corrode. Okay, the zinc or magnesium alloys which are attached to the pump bodies and pipes or attached to the steel will act as anode and denote the and donate the electrons during the chemical reactions, and the anode corrodes and thereby providing the desired sacrificial protections. So we attach some more electrochemically active metal like zinc and magnesium with the steels. Okay, and as a result, this attached zinc and magnesium will donate the electron during the reaction, not the in place of steel, and thus it protects the steel from being corroded during the rusting process. Okay. Third technique, that is alloying. Third technique is alloying. Third technique is alloying process. So it is very interesting or exciting process, and it is one of the greatest gift of material science to mankind. We can say a metallic solid or liquid that is composed of a homogeneous mixture of two or more metals, or two or more metallic elements, or of metals and non-metal, usually for the purpose of imparting or increasing specific characteristics or properties superior to the pure metal. Okay. So what is alloying? That is composed of, basically what is alloy? Composed of two or more elements, at least one of which is metallic, at least one of which is metal, mixing at atomic level. So mixing of different elements, okay, one must be metallic element, okay, and criteria is that mixing should be at atomic level or homogeneous mixing, okay, not heterogeneous mixing. So alloying is done for many reasons, okay, typically to increase the strength, okay, to increase the corrosion resistance property, or to reduce the cost. So our main objective of alloying is to improve the mechanical properties, or increase the strength, or increase the corrosion resistance property, or to reduce the cost. I'm just giving to I'm going to give you an example, then it will simplify the concept. Okay, so example is that stainless steel. Okay, stainless steel basically an alloy of steel, chromium and nickel, where chromium and nickel are main alloying elements. Okay, and having better strength and corrosion resistant property than steels. Stainless steels are having better corrosion resistance property than steels, and that's why stainless steels are commonly used where corrosive environment is there, like used as surgical instruments, used in desalination plant, used in power sectors, used in process plants, or used in household application for cooking. Okay, as a cooking instrument or cooking utensils. Okay, so stainless steels are having better strength and corrosion resistance property than steel. The reason is stainless steels have chromium and nickel as main alloying elements. Okay, so we can conclude by alloying, by mixing chromium and nickel, we can improve the strength, mechanical properties, as well as corrosion resistance properties of the steel. Okay. On the other side, another example is brass. Another example of alloy is brass, which is an alloy of copper and zinc. This brass is comparatively cheaper than copper. If you wish to procure it from the open market, then copper cost near about 800 rupees per kg, where brass cost near about 550 rupees or 500 rupees per kg. Okay. So after alloying, after mixing the zinc with copper, we can improve the cost, we can reduce the cost of the copper. And many properties are similar. Many properties of brass and copper are similar. Okay, so in place of copper we can also go for brass. Okay, because brass is basically a cost effective option for us. So we can conclude that this alloying process can be done to increase the strength or mechanical properties, increase the corrosion resistance properties, or to reduce the cost. Okay, so this alloying process is also termed as solute solution. This is also termed as solute solution, and can be executed by one of these method. Can be executed by one of these methods. Okay, so first one is interstitial solute solution, second one is substitutional solute solution, and third one, that is substitutional interstitial solute solution. Okay, what is this? I'm coming to it. Interstitial solid solution, the typical example of this is the structure of pure metal. Okay, same type of same atom is observed in the structure, but this is interstitial solid solution, and typical example of this interstitial solid solution is tin, an alloy of ferrum or iron and carbon. If you check the microstructure of this steel under the microscope, you can easily find that carbon atoms occupy the interstitial position in ferrum lattice. Okay, why it is so? The size of carbon atom is comparatively smaller than ferrum atom, and as a result, they can easily occupy the interstitial position or the position between two atoms. Okay. Now coming to the next one, and the substitutional solution, and the example of substitutional solution is brass. Brass basically an alloy of zinc and copper and zinc, where zinc atom replaces the copper atom in the lattice. Okay, as the atoms are of almost same size. So you can consider these alloying elements as foreign element you can say, or outsider. So if which type of alloy can be possible, that depends on the size of this foreign element, atomic size of this foreign element. If it is smaller, comparatively smaller than the base material, then it will occupy the interstitial position. If it is almost same size, it will replace, or if it will substitute the atom of base metal or base element, and the example is brass, that is substitutional solid solution. Third one, that is mixture of these two. This is a mixture of these two, that is substitutional interstitial solid solution, and the example is typical example is stainless steel. Typical example is stainless steel. Okay. Uh, so if you check this diagram, is check this image, you can easily find that carbon occupies the interstitial position. Chromium atom, which is having almost similar size of ferrum atom, replaces the ferrum atom from the lattice. So this is interstitial type, and this is substitutional type. Now that's why stainless steel is an typical example of substitutional interstitial solid solutions. So I just wish to conclude that alloying is a process to mixing two or more metallic elements with other non-metals to improve the mechanical properties, to improve the corrosion resistance properties, okay, to improve the other properties like magnetic properties or electrical properties than pure metal. Okay, and to another aspect of alloying is to reduce the cost. Okay, and this alloying process can be performed or can be executed by these three methods: the interstitial solid solution, substitutional solid solution, and mixing of interstitial and substitutional, that is substitutional interstitial solid solution. The typical example of interstitial solution is steel. Typical example of substitutional solid solution is brass, and typical example of third one is stainless steel. Okay, so moving on. This is a very busy slide and illustrating the effect of adding different elements in steel. Okay, so these are the alloying elements. So these are the element can be mixed steel to improve the properties, to control the properties. Okay, so these are the alloying elements that and the effect of these alloying elements are highlighted here. For example, manganese that increases strength and harness, and decreases ductility and weldability. Okay, so it affects the hardenability of the steel. On the other side, phosphorus increases strength and hardness and can decreases ductility and notch toughness of steel. Okay. Copper, that is beneficial to corrosion resistance property. If percentage of copper is greater than 0.2%, then it is beneficial for corrosion resistance property. Nickel, that is nickel is a very important alloying element in case of steel, and that is basically a ferrite strengthener, and that increases the hardenability and integrity of the steels. Okay. The main alloying element in case of high alloy steel or alloy steel is chromium, and that is not listed here. And as we will discuss the effect of chromium as alloying element during discussing the stainless steel. Okay. So this is all about today's class. In our next class, we will discuss about the stainless steel, its typical applications, tool steels, its typical application and their classifications, and then cast iron, the classification of cast irons, their microstructure, different microstructure of cast irons, and its application, and then non-ferrous metals and alloys like aluminum, magnesium, copper, titanium, and other refractory metals. Okay, we will discuss it later. So any query, any question, please ask me now. Any doubt till now?